and the last session of our 3-day virtual conference. I'm imagining everyone is doing a little happy dance right now at their workplace or at home, their home office. Once we wrap up here, please complete this session's evaluation as well as the general conference evaluation. I'll chat out the links to both of those at the end of the session, and you can also access them in the conference app. This is your last chance to update your session selections. Please visit mncpa.org/mycpe. Click on My Schedule and update your sessions there if you had registered for a session but ended up switching. Now for the fun part, I've got some prize winners. Thank you first to all of the exhibitors who helped make this virtual conference a success. We've been pushing out notifications with the winners of the exhibitor prize drawings all afternoon. So if you haven't already, check your notifications after this session to see if you're a winner. Vendors will reach out to winners directly. I have a few more prizes to announce though. The winners of the $50 Target gift card for participating in the MNCPA treasure hunt are Ryan Olson, Rick Lopez, Marlon Ciarda, and Marietta Myrold. And the winners of the $75 Amazon gift cards for the gift card giveaway are Sohini Purushottam, Jerry Lee, Fiona Robinson, and Peter Trandum. An MNCPA staff person will be in touch to verify your emails. Congratulations to all our winners, and I apologize if I butchered any names there. And last time you'll hear this, but remember to answer all the polling questions in order to receive CPE credit during this session. And one final note, it came to our attention that the dates for MBAC 21 were listed incorrectly in a few places online. Our bad, we apologize. Please note, next year's conference dates are June 21st and 22nd, 2021. This is a Monday, Tuesday. Thank you, and we apologize again for the confusion. I am now happy to introduce our speakers, Lisa David and Jake Robbins. Lisa is a partner at eCapital Advisors, where she helps business executives use their data to increase profitability and realize their organization's full potential. She addresses concerns and provides beneficial solutions by understanding her clients, their business models, and their goals. Jake recently joined eCapital Advisors, where he leads the robotic process automation practice, helping clients create their digital workforce. Previously, he spent many years in the supply chain world at Anheuser-Busch. He's passionate about helping people realize the importance of their data and driving growth through analysis. So Jake and Lisa, welcome. I am going to stop sharing my screen now and turn the controls over to you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Can you still hear us okay?
We can hear you great.
Awesome. I will then share my screen. Ready to go. All right, can you guys see my screen?
It looks like you just need to switch your display. We see presenter view right now.
Okay, how about
there we go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Awesome. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know the times are tough right now with COVID going on, but we do absolutely appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and learn more about the science of data to drive results and how we can best utilize the data we have at our fingertips today to best combat the different problems we kind of tackle in our day-to-day operations. So with that being said, I'm going to do a quick introduction of who we are before we kick off the main presentation today. I've asked Carolyn to tell me any questions that come up during the presentation. So if you do have questions, please feel free to ask. I like to think of this as a conversation. I know you guys are mute right now, but please, we do love questions and we love hearing your feedback during the call. We think it makes it more interactive and it gets kind of you get to ask the experts kind of, hey, what's the newest trend while we're doing the presentation. So if you have any questions or anything, can't hear me, you need me to talk louder, just let Carolyn know and she'll let me know and I can change. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it off over to Lisa, who will give a quick introduction to who she is, and then I'll give a kind of a larger introduction to who I am.
Yeah, pleasure to meet everyone today. as Carolyn mentioned, some of my roles at eCapital. Prior to eCapital, I started my career as a CPA and auditor in public accounting. So I spent 8 years in public accounting at Arthur Andersen out of Minneapolis. And for the last 19 years, I've been at eCapital as one of the owners and partners of the company, really leverage owning and have passion around the take-to-market strategy, partnering with our customers on their needs, whether it be from a planning perspective, business modeling, forecasting, analytics, robotic process automation, visualization. So we're happy to be here today. In addition to all that fun stuff, I spend a lot of my personal time supporting two very competitive dance daughters. I also am passionate about advancing women in business. My love of my life is country music and college football. Can't wait for that to be back, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. So a little bit about me. So I'm not the typical FP&A consultant. I know that from experience. So prior to me joining eCapital and kind of joining this FP&A world, I actually worked in supply chain. So for four and a half, 5 years, I worked at Anheuser-Busch, kind of leading the forecasting team over there. While I was there, I led the first machine learning project and kind of fell in love with advanced data analytics and how to best utilize all of the data at our fingertips. AB, being a very large corporation, had billions upon billions upon billions of rows. And sometimes it's hard to see, the big picture when you're looking through all of that data, right? So I fell in love with kind of dissecting what's important, what's not important out of that forest of data to best utilize the things we had already kind of collected to get to that, end result that we wanted to reach. While I was there, I was able to save a lot of money for the company, mainly through really intuitive kind of BI reporting, some RPA, and of course the machine learning project that I run. I'm new to Minneapolis. However, I'm a big foodie. So if you guys have recommendations for restaurants, please feel free to say it in the chat. I will look at the log later and maybe take some recommendations once everything starts opening up. I have a cat. I love my cat. I also am a huge traveler. I was planning to travel twice internationally this year, but unfortunately with COVID, my plans have been more about exploring Minneapolis, as I am actually not from here. I'm from New York. Post that, I'm also a huge fan of mentoring and on education. So I actually love giving these speeches. I've done a few in my past. And I just love talking with people about data and really driving home kind of what makes them, passionate about this subject, right? This is something where everyone has their own vision of what to do. And I love hearing how, the unique use cases people are using their data today to really drive these innovative ideas forward. So with that being said, I want to start off today with just a brief overview of kind of how we view the analytics space here at eCapital. So I like to start off with almost all of my presentations with defining the term. And this goes again because I feel, and I think a lot of people might agree, that everyone has different kind of meanings for these terms, right? Machine learning to some people means one thing and means something else. Analytics itself means some things to other people, right? So for us, when I talk analytics, what I mean is that idea of the process of finding patterns and information and kind of overall trends through the forest of data we have, right? So it's that idea of taking the data we have as an organization and driving home, analysis and different procedural things to get those insights we're looking for. It's that overall idea of how can I make the best decision using the data I have. So with that being said, I think we're up to our first polling question.
All right, let me unmute myself there. All right, the first polling question should be in front of you now. This will remain open for the next 45 seconds or so. So please submit your answer. And again, if you missed the introduction, this is how we are tracking attendance for CPE purposes. So please answer the polling question in front of you, hit submit, and that is how you will receive credits. You got a lot of recommendations here for restaurants already.
Awesome. I appreciate it more than you know. As someone who's using the same restaurants to order in right now, I'm glad that at least, I love having these conversations. The fact that I get a restaurant list to tackle at the end is, icing on the cake for me. So I appreciate it.
Perfect. We'll be sure to send those your way. And one question that came in, this is for Lisa. Are you a Kenny Chesney fan?
I am a Kenny Chesney fan. My favorite is Luke Bryan. And it's funny, I'm actually working with a record label now out of Nashville. And it's just a fascinating world to see how that industry works. And so it's fun to meet a lot of clients, but a record label in Nashville is definitely on the high side.
Yeah, there are definitely some perks to living in the data world, right? Everyone needs, and even at this poll shows, right, 87% of you don't think your organization is utilizing the data to the fullest, right? This is what we see across the board, across every industry, record labels included. So sometimes we get really interesting calls with really interesting people. And
things like the music industry that have changed to all streaming data. So the way that their revenue model was, 5 years ago is extremely different. Now you have a different SKU for every artist's song everywhere it's streamed across the world. So it's interesting how the model changes of the industry also affect the data that's in the industry, and then how you forecast it or use that data effectively for the business as well.
It just goes to show you that, it's not just the IT world now that works with data all the time, right? It's almost every function of every company we work with that has some aspect of data management and data analysis to really drive home their functional units goals.
Yeah, great feedback. Percentages are pretty high.
Awesome. So with that, I'm going to actually continue on. You're right. I see all these recommendations now in the chat. I love it. Thank you, guys. Okay. So seeing as most of the audience, at least today, says, hey, we're not using our data right? We're not using it to the fullest extent. So what is the goal, and why should I care that we're not using it to the fullest extent, right? And the way I see it is analytics helps your business understand what they are doing right and what are they doing wrong, and whether they need to pivot from those wrong decisions to get to those right decisions, right? And I wanted to put 2 quotes out here because I think these just are so true in today's environment that I love sharing them, right? And the first one, and this is the one we talk about this all the time in eCapital, right, is the price of light is less than the cost of darkness. And that really hits home for me. It's the idea that, we only know what we know. And to understand more and to lighten up, our organization through data-driven decisions really kind of gets to that overall goal of increasing the growth for the company, affecting the bottom line in a positive way.
And we'll get to some of this here in some of the slides coming up. But something that's really come up in 2020 is, in addition to internal data, it's leveraging external data. So we have retailers leveraging external data, understanding their state category analysis of like what is selling on their e-commerce across each state. What does that mean to the COVID Johns Hopkins data? What's that mean to the weather data, the state data? So we'll talk about that as we go up through today's presentation, but there's a lot of new ways the data is becoming very powerful, that it has really increased over even the last few months than even some of our data initiatives before. So it's no longer just even organizing internal data, it's also leveraging the needed external data that really drives that price of light.
Yeah, and the second one I think is just holds true to how do we use all this data, right? I think we're information rich and time poor.
Yeah.
I think everyone will agree that they don't have enough hours in their day to do all the tasks they're assigned, right? And that's mainly because of how much tools and what we like to call the patchwork quilt of enterprise applications that run throughout all of the organizations to get those insights that you need to be able to really make the correct decision moving forward, right? So the idea that we have so much data, but we may not have the time to utilize it the best, kind of hits home to some of the things we're going to be talking about today, how to really focus in on the data and make it easier to get to those insights so that we are information rich, but we're not time poor anymore. So
Jake likes to have me do this slide because
I'm too young.
Yeah, when I realized that I was supposed to have a 30-year high school class reunion this year that has to be moved to next year, this is when you know that you've got the evolution of the journey here. But basically organizations started years ago desiring to understand what happened, why did it happen. We've evolved. There's a big push on the word enterprise business intelligence. What action should I take? What's likely? And really where we're moving is just an entire journey of what can I automate? I mean, what can I use as a digital workforce for manual tasks so that I can have gain efficiencies? That's becoming a really huge evolution. And then the end-to-end analytics future. So, I mean, the nice thing is about analytics today is the speed to value is so high without a high cost of investment. I mean, the space has changed drastically in the last 15 to 20 years. This used to be an enormous barrier to entry at the price point and the time to value. Customers today are able to start with some of the innovation that's out there and have insights in weeks, and the cost is significantly less than what it would have been even 5 years ago. So that's really exciting, is that the barrier is so much lower to entry. That means we're working with clients that range in size, all the way from under 100 employees up to the Fortune 100. And I really like that that's available to everyone now. It's no longer just, for large companies.
Yeah, and when we say how is the analytics space evolved as a whole, right? What we're really talking about is like the cutting edge, right? So the cutting edge companies today, they're really using machine learning and predictive analytics to really drive home their data. Other people may still be trying to get their data organized, right? And that's not a bad thing. It's just, how do I then get to that end goal of where the cutting edge companies are today, right? And what's the journey to make, if I'm all the way at the left hand, or even, if I'm using pens and papers still to keep track of all the data we have, how do I really get to the point of where I can go to this, end-to-end analytics software or solution, so I can, stop writing everything on, pen and paper journals. So to sum it up, analytics is really ever present in almost all parts of the industry. But the way I look at it is kind of into 4 different, big categories, right? It's big data, right? We have mountains and mountains of data, billions upon billions of rows of things we transact. How much of this is important? What are the key KPIs from that data that I can derive? And from those KPIs, what are the actions I should be taking? And to really hit home on that big data principle, a lot of people are using business intelligence tools today, right? Taking something that is able to digest all of that data, to be able to visualize it and come up with executive reports, to be able to really understand where that data is telling us, right? From there, it's kind of to go on the more right-hand side of the kind of arrow I showed before, is that automation. Once you have the visualization there and you're using all your data to the fullest, now it's, how do I get more time back in my day so I can be focusing on the analysis and not focusing on those tedious tasks that I have. And then lastly, once we kind of freed up time even more, it's how do I get to a point where the machine or the data itself is telling me a story I don't know, right? I wanted the data to tell me a story I'm not thinking about. Answer a question I don't know about. Find an insight that I would love to know, but I just can't even think of the question to ask. So analysis helps, and analytics as a whole, and the tools out there and the solutions that we help provide clients of ours really tackle all 4 of these buckets. So I wanted to take it now a step kind of more micro and talk about the analytics journey in a company sense, not as kind of an industry sense, right? So here at ECAP, the reason why we're here today is that we have expertise in a lot of the best analytic tools out there, right? So from data science, a lot of the new age technologies, a lot of the open source things that the experts in the academias, people in academia are using today, data engineering, using data hubs to really kind of leverage all the data we have at a really fast processing time, RPA, which we're going to talk about later, and of course BI. So why are we here today, and why trust us? We have experience in this sector. We've been doing this for what now, 30 years? 20 years, and we just love it, right? So hopefully the passion comes through on the call. I love doing these in person because it's even more easy to see the fact that I'm jumping all over the place because I love this stuff so much. But yeah, we love this stuff. We love talking about it, and that's why we're here today. So to go back to the idea that everyone's at a different point of maturity, and again, this is okay, right? So the way I look at it is people that are young, and then people are at the cutting edge, right? So at the young stage, what we're trying to understand is, what is my data telling me? And the biggest thing that people use today is BI tools, right? BI tools and Excel. Those are the 2 biggest things that I think companies around the globe, not even just in Minneapolis or in America, are using, right? They're leveraging these tools to help dissect and pivot their data to come up with the stories they want to tell. Once that's done, people then start getting really curious in this automation, right? How can I take away these tedious tasks that I've been talking about so I can focus in on the data itself and not focus on the process of, digesting that data?
Do you want to give like a 4 example of one of your clients that you're kicking off doing?
Yeah, sure.
Doing like a vendor portal or something?
Yeah, sure. So actually we have a client that we have a kickoff meeting on Monday, and for the automation side, what we're doing is we're taking the PDFs from their invoices and running it through an automation pathway that takes that information and actually plugs it into the accounts payable system, right? So that's just one, really short example that's pretty much ever present in every industry where, how do I do accounts payable or accounts receivable in the correct way so that I'm automating it in a way that's sustainable, and I can, repurpose my workforce in a way that they're focusing on the strategic and not focusing on these, manual tasks that we all waste our time with. From there, the next big thing that people are really curious about is predictive analytics, right? This idea of machine learning, of data algorithms, to really hone in on, hey, can you help me understand my data to really forecast out things in the future, predict things in the future, categorize things, to really get home kind of answering questions I may not even be asking. And lastly, I don't think many companies are there today, but using artificial intelligence, right? Having an easier way to interact with that predictive analytics process so it's more human-like, right? Having a robot or a chatbot who's really able to guide us, in a sense, to really make those correct decisions. Very few companies are in the artificial intelligence block today. I would say the majority of people we talk to are actually in that data understanding, right? They're still at the beginning stages and trying to really leverage the different aspects of big data today. So with that being said, I would love to know where you guys are, right? So one of the polling questions, and you could hopefully come up very soon, is asking, hey, where are you in this step? Where are you in this maturity?
All right, and that poll should now be in front of you. So please take a moment to answer the polling question. This is the second polling question, and this is how we are tracking your attendance for CPE purposes.
Yeah, and going to what we said earlier, it seems like around over 50% are in the data understanding or pre-data understanding phase. And that's pretty typical to the clients we talked to today, where people feel like they're not leveraging the data as much as they can. And they're not really getting to that point of business intelligence or, business, data analysis to the point of where they can really go to that process automation phase.
We'll keep the poll open for about 10 more seconds. So if you haven't answered yet, please answer the polling question in front of you so we may track your attendance.
And it's awesome to see, 41% there doing, process automation and predictive analytics. That's amazing, right? That's great. We love to see that. And someone who's been passionate about this for a long time, I love that people are kind of going on board and kind of really leveraging those technologies out there today to start using things to automate and to really drive that, machine learning predictive analytics.
Yeah, that is great. Well, there are our results there. So thank you so much, everybody.
For the 6 people who said they're using artificial intelligence, I would love to know how you are using it. Because this is something I always love talking about, because it's something that for almost all clients we talked about, it's almost like a dream. It's like 30 to 40 years out. And I love to see that some people are already playing with it today.
Yeah, if you could share in the chat, share in the chat box how you're using artificial intelligence, we'd love to know.
Yeah, because that just expands our minds too, right? This is, like I said, this is a conversation. So we want to learn from you as much as hopefully you take something away from this chat. Awesome. So before I go into kind of dissecting the different aspects of the data analysis process, I wanted to go back to something I care a lot about, and this is probably because I care about educating things, right? Analytics is not just a tool; it's a mindset, right? And at the end of the day, I think the best thing you can do, or the one thing you can take away from this chat or this call, is that if you want to make strides in the data world, the best thing you can do is help create that culture of analytics in your organization. And we kind of bucketize this into 3 things, right? Having that mentality to really trust your data. And this takes a lot of time. No organization at day one is going to trust their data without doing vigorous, over and over again analysis to make sure it's correct, right? They're always going to go back to, I know this is correct because I've been doing this for 20 years, or I have the experience in the industry, or, I've seen this firsthand and I know what the decisions, the best decisions to make today. I think with the COVID situation is even more telling that, that experience is vital, but also having a grasp of the data and, these different data sets that we have at our fingertips to really make decisions.
And sometimes the data was too summarized to understand the trust of the numbers. What I love now that's available is the innovation that can give you a top level revenue number and go all the way down to the transactional detail to the penny. So it's like, I call it finally the for real drill down, and the onion. where I can organize and make sure that I have one version of the truth, and I can ask any attribute question on my data and have it go all the way down to the penny. So every time I drill down or ask a question on an attribute, I have the details, because this is where, just because of the architecture that was available 20 years ago, it was an on-premise world. We had to take we had to take extracts from data sources in the company. We had to summarize them, put them in a transformation up to maybe a data mart, a data ware. So basically, the architecture drove a lot of the reason that we didn't trust, because basically what we did is we just took extracts from every separate siloed source system, and then you and I showed up at a meeting and you pulled from a different source, or you pulled from a different time of the day. And so we spent the whole meeting discussing whose numbers were right. And it was just a product of what was available to us. And I really love the innovation that's happened in the industry, because now we actually can have trust in the numbers and not just think that it's a national account problem. We can say, oh no, it's a pricing inconsistency, because I actually gave an inconsistent price on the same product across a bunch of different distribution locations. So it's really also something that the ability to create a culture of analytics is much more possible today than it was harder to do. And it's gotten so much easier.
Yeah, I think I've heard
you came in, Jake, at the easier side of this conversation. That's not fair. I mean, you were still in high school when we were trying to fight through this. So,
and it goes back to, I think, the term that we hear most, right, in the industry right now to help drive that data-driven mentality is the single source of truth, right?
Yeah.
It's how do I set up that single source of truth so that everyone pulls from those same numbers, and we can align on a vision where everyone is using the same values, and those values we know to be correct. To go off of that is, once that single source of truth is kind of set up, the next thing I think we love to see in all the clients we work with is that data curiosity, right? It's kind of called now the citizen developer, right? Someone that works as an analyst or a CPA in the firm or anything, where they just love data so much that in their free time, they're looking through that data mart that you set up to get to, questions that they want answered because they're just interested in it. And we see this more and more now than ever before, where people are really going out of their way to learn different techniques to really drive home value by, this idea of being curious of what the answer is, what is the data telling us the answer is.
And then how that data curiosity drives to like alignment to the other parts of the organization. Yeah. So if the data tells me that this category is important in the state of Minnesota, then what's my marketing to that region? So you don't have to have the same marketing for all states if the curiosity of the data is different. So it allows a huge opportunity. So
yeah, and the last one, and maybe I put this here because I lead the RPA practice here, but I think to really hit home on that analytics culture, you really got to befriend automation. So I think automation in the past, Skynet from Terminator really showed that automation is a scary thing, and it really isn't. The way we like to look at it is it really liberates you from that worst hour of your day, right? It lets you take a hold of what you want to be working on and really, lets you free. It helps you work on what you want to do. It takes away the tedious, it takes away the manual, so you can focus on what you want. It's not something here that's going to replace all the workers in any organization. No one, we've never said that. I don't think, hopefully no one else has told you that. The idea of automation is really to augment your workforce, right? And to augment your work to make it easier and better for you so you can focus on those human elements, customer service, strategy, things like that. So getting to the stage where everyone's comfortable with automation and knows it's there to help, not to hurt, is something we really see value. So with that kind of started, I wanted to start off today with talking about, I think 50% of the people here on this call today are really interested in is that data understanding, right? So the big question, again, I always like to start my presentations off like this, kind of frame up the next 10, 15 minutes of conversation we have, right? So what is the best way to manage all of this information, right? And I would say we have a really good answer. I would say having worked in this industry for so long, we kind of know what works and what doesn't work. So with that being said, I think Lisa talked about this earlier. Maybe she can talk about it even more because she's lived it way more than I have. What is it like to get insights today, right? The old way. So, we lived this when I worked at AB. It was the same. You'd have to ask a question. There, you would put in a support ticket and have IT look at it. You would then wait for IT to answer you. A lot of the times at least what I would notice is they would put back, fake responses to delay the SLA even more. So it would just take a long time. Once we finally got it back, half of the time it was wrong. And we have to go back to step one and re-ask the question, maybe being more specific of what we were looking for.
And then on maybe the accounting side or FP&A side of the world, that insight was me pulling from multiple sources into doing Excel gymnastics for days before I could. So if somebody would ask you a new question, and it would be tons of Access database work, tons of, as we call them, the BAS system, the big old spreadsheet system, and it was like it was either this way or it was the spreadsheet and data and Access database way, and it took time. It took us giving up a Saturday at 83 degrees sunshine so I could answer the question on Monday at 10 a.m. And I mean, so a couple different paths, but they've existed for a long time.
Yeah. So the new way, and the way we love to kind of present and kind of share, is this idea of having a question, but then having all the data at the lowest level of detail there ready for you, right? So instead of having to ask these questions, waiting for IT, doing this Excel gymnastics, what if all of my data at the source level was already there ready for us to analyze, right? And what does that allow us to do? So kind of with that idea of having all the data or kind of a data hub with everything there, what's the real benefit, right? And it's this idea of letting you peel the onion back. So the idea of having all these, sub-ledgers and ledger details at the macro level, but being able to really drill down the individual transaction and go back and forth in this arrow as much as you want, right? So not having to ask another question if you wanted to get that detail level, having it already there, ready for you to drill down to that lowest level of detail, so that if the question arises, you can answer it quickly and it's the right data, right? So that's why I love this idea of having a single data hub that really takes all the data at the lowest level, because it really does allow you to get to that transaction level, the most detailed level, so you can really make the best informed decision that you
And really the IP behind it is allowing us to map data in such a speed way that it gets us the ability to not give up any of that granular drill down. So it's like being able to see a top level revenue, accounts receivable, and then say, show me all of the invoices that are 60 to 90, instead of just saying, here's the bucket. It's like, here's actually the 5 invoices. If I got these collected, make up 70% of that, over 60 bucket. Accounts receivable has become an enormous, importance in 2020. And so customers are really, even at the, basically operating level, just accounts receivable, inventory, sales at that detail level. Really, retailers being able to see SKU, location, day information every day, every hour if they need to. That it's really providing a tremendous amount of value.
Say, do you mind if I chime in here with a question?
Yeah, I was going to look at them too. So absolutely.
Fabulous. So a question just came through. What about if your data is in multiple systems? How do you get it so you can peel back the data?
So you map the multiple systems to this data hub in the middle, and then in the hub, I basically organize the data into a business schema lens where it's mapped together and organized. And I can also add additional attributes if like they didn't exist in the source system. I can add them at that level. So I have it at the, bring it in as is from the various systems, and then organize it to a, like what we call as the business view. And somebody like myself with a finance background, I leverage it from the business view. Jake's team helps me get it ingested in, and I help design the organization at that business level. But then it allows me to design any interface of how I want to visualize that.
Yeah.
But that's how you do that. And so whether we are meeting with a customer on Monday who's very much in the arena of doing mergers and acquisitions. So they're acquiring about 4 companies a year. So they do not even have one general ledger system. Every time they buy a new company, they need to bring that into the hub. So that causes them a lot of pain because they cannot see across the business once they go acquire somebody. But even if you're not acquiring people, you have different systems. You have again, you might use Salesforce for your CRM. You might have a separate, payroll that could be in-house or outsourced. So you can have a general ledger system. If you're selling anything with a point of sale system, again, inventory systems. Those are all the list, and we almost assume there's always a list, and that's why it's been difficult, is because they had different data levels, different string levels, and by doing this and having a hub in the middle, that's what allows this to work.
Yeah, and just to add to that, right? So with the technology today, and I come from somewhat of a background in IT too, these systems, these unified data hubs, they leverage connectors, which are basically, tools that these companies make to really directly connect with almost any type of database, right? At the end of the day, regardless of what application you're using, the data is getting stored somewhere. And once we understand where this data is getting stored, all we really need to understand to make this unified data hub is how the data connects from one system to the other.
And even that one of the data sources can be external data, and it can be Excel, it can be even something outside of any system they have. So it's anything. It's anything from NetSuite to QuickBooks to JD Edwards to Salesforce, any other CRM tool. So you name the list, it's there.
And again, because and you'll learn this soon when I talk about RPA. There's even more, right? You can get, with the way that these public companies structure their data, you can use what's called an API to pull data from Twitter, from Facebook, from Johns Hopkins, from the Weather Channel, right? You just have all these options available to you because everyone's really interested in looking at the data, that it really makes it quite easy to kind of set one of these hubs up once you understand how it works and how the data flows together.
Yep, and it's really elastic to size. So we're helping on this data hub concept. It's like, we're helping a $25 million company in revenue with a data hub, and we're helping a Fortune 100. So it's like, it's the same hub. It's just an elastic ability, because everything is so cloud-based nowadays that it just allows a lot of elasticity, so we can help mid-market, medium enterprise, large enterprise, all leverage the capability.
All right. Is the data real time or on a lag?
It can be as real time as you need it to be. Up to about 5 to 10 minutes. So some of our retailers do it on the hour. But yeah, it's as fast as you need it, or it's scheduled every night. Really just depends on how much the data in the source list changes, how fast that's updated. It can be set up to be automated.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Great questions. So I want to do a really brief overview of that's all great, right? So once you have this hub and this data hub, what do you do next, right? So what are the data science doing today? So I want to talk briefly about machine learning, just really, really briefly, because I love this topic, and I hope that someday, if you're not doing this already, your organization really gets to get a hold of this technology, because it's really, really cool. So machine learning is the use of advanced algorithms to find patterns and insights, right? It's answering questions that you may not even be asking. So to go back to this idea, it ingests all the data. It could be from Oracle, from SAP, Salesforce, it doesn't matter, right?
QuickBooks, wherever.
And you take that and you put it into a machine learning model, and what that model will do is it will pump out estimates, recommendations, categorizations, so you can take that information and really make actionable insights out of it, right? And the field is so powerful today because there's this open source community around it, and everyone who loves data science will let you know that there are so many tools out there that we can leverage today, much more than 15, 20 years ago, where it was much harder to do this type of work, to really use these algorithms to make the best decisions possible. And what I love about it is that you really get to see these insights where, even if they're obvious, you're not using them today. So my favorite example that I use when I was working at AB on the project I worked on, we were running a machine learning model to forecast how much beer we were going to sell at a certain location on a certain day. What we noticed was that if we increased the amount of beer on the pallets that we delivered, we included that metric in the model, our forecast accuracy was actually greater, right? So this is something we all implicitly knew, right? If we put more beer on a pallet, then it would going to sell more because some people buy in pallet quantities. But we never really thought about adding that factor to the forecast itself. But the machine learning model found that out. So even though we weren't looking for it, using these algorithms, we were able to kind of put new, what we call features, or new explanations into the model to help us drive home our forecast accuracy to really affect that bottom line. And if you are using machine learning today, again, feel free to type in the chat, what are the use cases you're using? Because I love to hear the other ways people are using this technology. So before I go,
this is just, again, just back to the size of company. This is a local company here, headquartered in Minnesota, leveraging a data hub. And this is on the larger side. They are multi-billion dollars in revenue. But again, you just wanted to, in this case, they had a very old data warehousing process where it would load from the multiple source systems overnight, take forever. And again, they had lots of rows of data, but it's like the speed of what they now have of, within a 12-month calendar time, they have 35 new executive dashboards to provide them all this data insight across all the FP&A, the accounting teams. They're now taking on the sales side of their business is what they're working on right now. But it's just a huge amount of value in a quick amount of time.
Yeah, and just to go on to this, right? What's amazing about this is once you're able to do it, 12 and a half times faster in less than 10 seconds to insight, when something like COVID happens and we need to change our business model fast to react to the new circumstances, you can, because the data is there and the insights are there, right? There's no longer a 2 to 3 week lead time to get to the insights you need today, right? And that's what's the really powerful thing, is it lets you almost create a safety net against the unpredictable, right? So you're able to really, almost feel assured that having this set up, you're able to make the correct decision. And if something were to happen, a new business comes into play, an unforeseen circumstance like COVID, you're able to react in time to make sure your business is stable throughout the change.
Yeah, based on that pivot in COVID, we're working with a retailer headquartered out of Wisconsin. And we had started working with their marketing team in December of 2019, looking for a privately held company, 20 years, been in the industry, has retail stores, a very good brand. Their marketing's top notch. I'm sure you've seen their commercials. They're some of the best in the industry. And we were working with their marketing team. And when COVID hit in March, we were able to pivot, and they had to shut down all their retail stores. We were able to show them their e-commerce platform. Every morning, 7 a.m., the executives can see every category, what fabric, what color, at every state, every detail. Of course, they could instantly see that the female buyer was buying more online than the male buyer. So the female buyer was spiking. And again, even on states that were shut down, they're still ordering. And again, the fabric choices. So they now have surpassed with this, in the great story is that they're now doing more e-commerce than even the combination of their e-commerce and retail revenue last year. And they can see this inside every day. It's just fascinating to see the state side of it. What is the top 10 category? Again, what's the choice? I mean, the gardening products, obviously, the clothing choices, but yeah, it's been very fascinating to be able to give them that pivot that fast.
Yeah, and again, just to go tack onto that point, it really allows them to change what they have to do, right? So they're able to make sure their store or their warehouse distribution locations are in stock with the right things, based on being able to see that data, right? So the fact that they have visibility to it and they can make these decisions really fast really helps the whole supply chain as a whole to really function as it needs to during these times. So with that being said, I want to kind of pivot now from that data understanding phase to talk a little bit about automation. So once we understand the data, right, and we know what story we want to tell, how can I free up my time to best be able to do this analysis so that I don't have to worry about these manual tests that I'm forced to do, right? So again, like I said at the start of the data understanding, I love defining terms. So what do I mean when I say RPA? This comes up a lot. I give talks on RPA all the time, and everyone has a different definition for it. So when we talk RPA here at eCapital, what I mean is that it's the software which integrates into almost any environment, any type of IT environment, and simulates employee actions, right? And that's the key point. It's not something that's just running a script. It's something that's going to be your digital workforce, right? And you're going to build it out to a point where you almost treat them as employees, right? But employees that don't take days off or don't get sick and don't make errors. They're almost the best employee. It's an employee without any HR problems. So with RPA capabilities, it kind of there's so much things that RPA and automation can do, but the biggest ones, the ones we see most often, are data entry, following rule-based procedures, data extraction, data validation, report generation, and emailing. Again, if you're going to take one thing about RPA away from today, the tagline I want you to remember is that any process that can be mapped can be automated. So again, I'll leave this up for a few seconds while I talk about a story about how I got interested in RPA in general. But I love the fact that almost anything you could think of can be automated. So I actually got started with RPA way before there was these tools out there in middle school. And while I was in middle school, I was playing with bots that would play these games for me, right? And by playing these games, I would get points and I would feel some sense of accomplishment because I was doing so well in the game. That kind of sparked my interest in automation as a whole and how it can really leverage it to kind of almost manipulate, website data to the nth degree. In college, though, I got even more interested in it. And what I did was create a bot, a sweepstaking bot. And what it would do is it would find sweepstakes on Twitter and then enter those sweepstakes for me while I was in class. So instead of, having a day job or something else, I actually just had a bot that would run and enter sweepstakes for me. It would enter around, 1,000 to 2,000 sweepstakes a day, which seems like a lot, but it really isn't. While I was doing this, I averaged winnings of $3,000 to $4,000 a month in prizes. I've stopped doing this from since then, but I still have a passion to the industry, which started off with my little project I did for fun during one semester in college. So that really opened my eyes to kind of say, really, like, hey, anything that if we can have a bot that enters sweepstakes for you and can amass all these prizes, it really can do anything. And seeing the evolution of the technology to a point where you needed to really understand coding really well to be able to make a bot like that, to where it's a little bit more easy and there's less barrier of entry to start with this technology. It's amazing because now I see people who would have never thought they can make a bot making a bot, and I love it. Because as someone who's been doing this for fun for a long time, I love seeing people who get interested in automation really take hold of the software that's out there today and leverage it to make things in their life easier.
What's fun about this is every industry and every client has a different kind of use case of what they need to have automated. But and then we work with companies that are, whether they're in construction, they're in some type of large equipment, or they have needs where they have to file forms, either with, agencies or vendor portals or somebody's wanting to have a repair. And so we can automate that process of all those forms getting passed back and forth. I think that's really fascinating. The area of, like you already mentioned, accounts receivable and accounts payable. I mean, that's a huge area, and that goes across all industries. But, really just that whole ability to do that validation, something, if the form is the same, if the form can be mapped, even if the form has differences, it has the ability to be automated. So it's just been really fun to work it kind of in a whiteboard use case fashion where we're going on site to another company on Tuesday that, does a lot of industrial resurfacing projects. And so there's a lot of forms they have to claim. If they're doing a city water tower resurfacing, there's the RFP forms, there's the forms for, again, the project, the different phases of the project. And so it's really fun to get a team together and really start talking about what forms are done in your world and really understand opportunities for automation.
Yeah, I think that's what I also love about having my hands in automated processes, right? Is that it always starts with the business, right? It doesn't start with the code. It doesn't start with anything else. It starts with what is the thing you want to automate today? And it's that question, right? It's what do I think would give me the best opportunity to free up the most time for my employees? And once you start having that conversation, I guarantee all 200 plus people in the chat today or watching this talk has a different idea in their head of what they would want to tackle first. And that's the amazing thing about it is almost every case you could think of, you can do.
And there's a chart on kind of where automation was going last year, and it was kind of like a 5-year curve chart. And I think with what's happened in 2020, it's been highly accelerated.
Yep.
I mean, we now have customer teams, where they're like, well, why, since we're not going to ever go back to our old normal, like, let's look at what we were doing. Is there any opportunities to automate things that were happening that we could gain efficiencies with? So it's really changed and accelerated, I think, in the last 3 to 4 months.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like the number of meetings we're in every week on automation, has just spiked.
Yeah, and again, it's that idea of how can I do more with less, right?
Yep.
And I think it's even more true now with everyone being separated and everyone, this is the first time I've seen you in person for 4 months, right?
Yeah.
It's almost crazy, right? So we're all in this situation now that, there's so much work that's getting done, and maybe some things are getting pushed to the side because, we don't have the same resources that we do in an office, right? We don't have this big office, office with all these different tools that are at our side, and having the ability to ask the expert down the hall if we have a question. So having this, safety blanket of automation really helps you focus in on what's important so that, the day-to-day operations can continue during any circumstance, be it COVID, be it.
Yeah. How about you share the bank example from Texas?
Oh yeah, it's great. So, right. So one of the big things that people are doing in banks today is the PPP loan program, right? And having to automate that process to make sure that not only the loans are being originated correctly, but the conversations between the recordings and the documentation reporting that goes back to the Federal Reserve to make sure you're abiding by the rules of the PPP program. A lot of companies today, a lot of banks today are really interested in making that automated, right? Having a way to not have to worry about it, right? You don't want added pressure that's already come off of the COVID crisis, right? Add automation into the mix and make it easier, and still have a lot of this extra potential benefits because of the PPP program. So yeah, it's great stuff. And if you guys have examples of where your companies are using automation today or ideas you have, please share it in the chat, right? At the end of the presentation, once we finish, we'll open it up to questions again where you can ask us anything, right? Be it any topic in this conversation or just data in general. Yeah. So to kind of sum up why automation, right? There's a lot of benefits that you see. And I love to work with companies about this because I love seeing it firsthand, right? And one of the most important things for me, having managed a team of people before, is that improved employee morale, right? Turnover is expensive. I think everyone could agree here that turnover is very expensive. It's that training time and everything you need to do to make sure your employees are happy. It takes a lot. I know we would go through 4 or 5 months of periods of time where we would just have a vacancy next to us. And having automation there to help with that so that they don't get burnt out on the work and they can focus on what they want to focus on, it's probably one of the most, great feelings I had while managing a team, is seeing them go to work and be happy, right? Enjoy what they're doing because they didn't have to do all these mundane tasks anymore. The rest of the kind of results are implicit in automation and why it's an amazing tool, right? Productivity. RPA solutions work 10 to 100 times faster than a human can. They never take a sick day, so they're reliable and consistent. They're not invasive today. You can put this in on the cloud, on premise, almost any environment today, it'll work. They are very, very secure. They go through SOX compliance and things like that to make sure that these tools leverage your data in the correct way and they're not creating security issues with it. A huge thing now too is there really is a low technical barrier to this tool or to these tools. It's that type of drag and drop functionality that's being added to these tools where you don't have to understand code, but you can understand kind of business process and really make some automation tools. Lastly, it's always accurate. So these are all things, again, why I love RPA as a tool and why I love it as a solution, and it's probably why a lot of people are interested in it today. Yeah. So real quick kind of overview of a use case we had recently. So we were working with over $1 billion revenue company, and we implemented 3 bots that would actually replicate the entire accrual process and be able to get that line item detail information on incentives, distribution fees, and things like that, which were not accounted for before in their pricing models. So being able to get that visibility to that actual realized price and being able to take into account the different incentives that the company was offering, or the sales force for the company was offering, to really kind of understand, where there was opportunity to really make changes in their strategy to best give the best price to all their customers, right? And this is just one example. Again, every company we work with RPA, they have a different example they want to tackle first. It's pretty much what's on the top of your mind, what do you wish can be automated, and let's sit down as a group and figure it out. So with that, I think I have one more final polling question for everyone, and then we're going to open up the last 20 minutes of the conversation to questions.
All right. So our third and final polling question should be in front of you now. Please submit your answer so that we may track your attendance for CPE purposes. Jake and Lisa, while we're collecting those answers, a question came in. I was wondering if maybe one of you could address it. It was while you were talking about RPA.
Yep.
And the question is, as finance and accounting employees, how do we go about getting our executive team to see the value of leveraging the investment and gain their buy-in? How would you recommend introducing this?
Yeah, so the way I love to do it is show a demo. Right? I think RPA is one of those things that with the visualization, it comes really clear what the opportunities are, right? So the way we started off is say, hey, to the executives, what is one process that we know takes a lot of time today? Let us do a quick demo of that. How it could be, what the future looks like when that is automated. And I think showing that and then kind of going over.
It's like a hybrid education with a custom demo that is relevant to a use case that the accounting and finance team desires. And so maybe it's a conversation with the finance and accounting team first on kind of like here's our processes today, and then getting to that so that when we meet with the executive team, it's really demystifying it to the executive team, educating them on here's the outcomes, here's the process today, here's the outcomes you can have with automation, and then showing them kind of a demonstration. Because I think it's a mystery. I mean, it's just one of those things until you really have seen it and gone through that. There's how could this work? And then we're doing a lot of proof of concept work to validate again before you go to a full production environment. There's a lot of proof of concept work, but it's fascinating. Once you do that exercise and really educate and kind of demystify, plain English, explain it to them, they're like, we're seeing a lot of where they're adopting that insight and moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, to quote a figure, right? So the ROI of an RPA project is usually between 60 and 200%, right? So I don't know a CFO in the world who wouldn't say, if I can give you 200% return on your investment, would you do it or not, right? And I think that also helps. So once you do that visualization, then kind of go over, the expected,
well documented, yes.
Yeah, the expected ROI of what you would receive for, doing this type of automation, it becomes really clear to almost every executive we talk to that it's something they wanted to really research more to see how they can, best utilize it. Great question.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that. Last chance to submit your answer to this poll question in front of you. I'll leave this open for 10 more seconds here.
Seems pretty split between BI software, the Unified Data Hub, and RPA, with a little bit of favoritism with the BI and the RPA, which is, again, pretty consistent with what we're seeing too.
Well, and the Unified Data Hub is brand new.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a household name. It's not even a household term. I mean, that's what Gartner's new category is going to be called.
Yep.
It's just that it didn't exist. I mean, this is like pre-IPO Silicon Valley. I mean, this is new innovation that even 5 years ago we couldn't have had with our customers. So, very fascinating.
Awesome. So, I'd love to leave time for questions. Again, I love having conversations. So, with the last 15 minutes we have, I saw some more things come up in the chat. I'm leaving it open for questions now. But again, I wanted to thank you guys for taking the time out today. I know everyone's very busy with dealing with this crisis and working at home. So I really do appreciate it. I know we love having these conversations, and hopefully we can further the conversation. That's something.
I do have a few more questions I can read out loud to you if you guys would like to answer them.
Yep.
So one person mentioned that they see a lot of benefits with automation, but one larger drawback is the elimination or reduction of entry-level positions and the human interactions. If we continue on this trend, how do more people get involved and have employment?
I think the one thing about it's meant to be efficiency gains of people's manual time, so that you can. But one of the banks that we were working with, they saw it as a liberation. so that their team members could spend more time in client experience. That's something they wanted to almost like change the workforce to be either more analytics driven or client experience driven. So it was really seen as I think we see a shortage in entry level talent. There was a labor shortage. So it's meant to be efficiency gains. And that's what we see with our clients. I mean, it's an education. It's definitely an education. But there's a lot, if you add up the man hours of what was happening, there's a lot of hours of W-2 labor that was being spent in those tasks. And so I think again, it's got to be seen as, improving the employee morale.
Yeah, so the way I see it too, it's like 30 years ago when computers didn't exist, we had a lot more people doing manual tasks. And as computers came about and became more used in business, you saw a reduction of these manual tasks and focus on computer work. The way I see the industry evolving is pretty similar, right? We're just going to redefine what entry-level positions are supposed to do. So instead of being, a data specialist who their whole job is just entering numbers from one location to another, it's going to be more focused on things like, strategy and coming up with the next great idea for the company and having, more customer service calls, right? And interacting more with your end consumer rather than focusing on, making sure the data is aligned. And I think that's almost an amazing thing, right? We get to take away this task that, again, we could call entry level or maybe lower skill work, and pivot it towards something that's more engaging for everybody, even the people that are doing the entry level work, right? So we never go into an organization and take automation as a way to cut headcount, because I don't believe that's the purpose of it. I think it's more to help with those jobs, right? It's more to help to augment it and to make sure that the people that are working for you are working to their fullest capabilities. But, if a point of time, 10, 15 years down the line where automation is, really ubiquitous across the industry, I just think it will change the way we look at entry-level work. I think we're going to get more analytics focused, more growth focused, and more, less data entry focused. But it's a great question.
All right, thank you for that. Another person submitted this question. They say, we tried to develop BI analytics internally and failed. How do we assure success if we try again?
That's a great question, right?
Well, the problem with BI, the problem is trying to put visualization before you've addressed the underlying data issues. And what I mean by issues, it's like what I'm saying, the 20-year data was built over 20 years or 5 years, but it wasn't ever structured or put together in a thoughtful business way. And so if you try to just put a good looking BI tool on top, it's like a lipstick on top of a pig conversation. That's why it typically doesn't, or if it fails, that's kind of the issue, is we didn't address the data underneath of the BI. Because BI only is successful if I have addressed the data underneath. And so that's really where we need to look at and analyze what we have and what we need to see, and really not just say you can't get to BI without the data conversation.
Yeah, I think that's totally correct. I think the term I use most often is garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the data that you're working with is not great, or it's not formatted in the correct way, or the company hasn't aligned that that's the source of truth, then yeah, the visualization on top of it doesn't really solve the problem, because you still have these disagreements and people being, I trust my Excel more than I trust the visualization, right? The second thing I've seen where it's failed is because there's no internal champion to really say, hey, this is the vision we want to go with, and I think this is going to change the way we work. And having that internal champion in your organization, and it could be you, to really drive home why you're interested in BI and why you think it's important, really helps executive leadership understand how to best utilize BI.
Yeah, and the change management that's needed with it. So yeah, love to talk further on that topic. We can obviously talk for hours on that topic. Great question.
Maybe that can be another presentation in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Here's another question. Does the ROI factor in IT costs associated with maintaining the automation? We have found sister companies of ours have enormous amounts of automated processes. However, they have to have an IT team of approximately 50 to maintain it all.
So,
and that might be based on they maybe started on the earlier path of automation tools that had a lot of like, I would say administration.
Yeah.
That's something the industry has really addressed in the last couple of years. And so I'd be curious to understand a little bit more. I have more questions, I guess, because that seems very, very much out of bounds of any type of need to leverage and run automation.
Yeah.
That to me means that they maybe picked an automation tool that was very manual and required a lot of like system admin work. And that's, you don't want to do that if you don't have to, because it's going to create what you just described. So I'd be curious. I have a lot of questions I have further curiosity for you on, but happy to talk with you at a different time to talk about it.
Because the teams I've seen successfully do like large scale automation, right? There's two ways that I usually see going. One, they outsource it to a center of excellence so they can take a hold of it and don't have to worry about internally focusing on the administration of it. Or two, it's the teams tend to be pretty lean. And it goes back to, are you using the tool to the fullest extent, right? Are you using the different methodologies out there today to really make sustainable automation, or are you just going the path of least resistance, and that's why you have this large team kind of administrating it? So I don't see that as much today, or people who are starting with automation today, but yeah, definitely something from the past when it was a little bit harder to kind of automate these processes.
The other thing we see that would cause that would be, if there's things about the mapping of it that wasn't accurately done, that requires all the administration. Because one of the keys is we have to make sure we partner with you to map it correctly, so that you shouldn't have that heavy dose of administration.
Yeah, it's just to add to that too, I totally agree with that, right?
Yeah.
So the second the business isn't talking with IT is the second these things need a lot of administration, right? Be it RPA or machine learning, the key to making these things successful is that partnership with the understanding of what is the data saying and what does the data need to do in a technical sense. Great question.
Right. Another question says, how do accountants learn API and RPA skills? What would you recommend to learn these skill sets?
Sure, great question. I think the courseware now that's available on like Coursera and edX are really pretty good to get you started, right? RPA less so than API / some of the data science things. I think those are a little bit more built out. RPA is with these technologies a little bit newer, but I know all of the RPA tools that we use here, they have universities, or what they call universities, where they offer kind of pathways to success, right? Kind of train you up with their technology so that when you're ready to use it, it's easy to use.
And then something Jake has built out for his customer teams is a huge enablement, so that when he works with them to automate a process, he's got a whole curriculum built out that is given to our clients so that they can educate and administrate it going forward. So it's just we partner to help. It's not one of the things about analytics. It needs to become living in the organization. Our goal is not to be at the organization living. Our goal is to help you get the analytics living, and then you can keep it living yourself. So he's built a whole curriculum out on the RPA side to really educate and administrate at a deeper level, more business level than what technology. And that's a huge passion of ours. And actually, one of my reasons I came to the company originally, before I actually ended up owning the company, is I just wanted it to be, everybody would tell me IT technical terms, and it's like I wanted to demystify that from like a CPA background. I wanted to say, like, no, talk to me in plain English terms that I understand. And so that's a passion of what we do, is really make it plain English. And so the whole curriculum is built that way. It's like I do not know how to write or read a SQL statement. It's not in my professional career path. I don't need to. I can still leverage all the capabilities. So really, that's a passion of ours as well. Is partnering with IT, but we're not. Our passion on data is to really be at that business background individual and helping them be able to use it.
Wonderful. Here's one more question. Is VBA / macro programming still relevant? Or is the relative ease and access to substantially more software designed for our specific needs making it no longer relevant?
amazing question. So the RPA technologies are, a lot of them leverage VBA if you want to do heavy Excel work, right? So I think VBA as a whole is still relevant. However, these RPA solutions help leverage that VBA coding and the macros that you can build in Excel to make it more sustainable, right? Excel, I've done a lot of VBA coding in my life. I actually did some last week. So it's useful in interacting with Microsoft Office, right? The Office suite. But the second you want to do something outside of the Office suite, right? Excel, PowerPoint, you can't. You're kind of limited in what you can do. So RPA helps you do all of that plus more, right? Plus creating reports, plus interacting with, SAP, plus interacting with JD Edwards. It allows you to do that full end-to-end automation rather than just focusing on the Excel work or the Office work that is in any project. So yeah, VBA is still used. I mean, I still use it in some of the RPA projects, but I like to leverage the larger skill set or larger kind of toolbox that RPA provides today because it makes the process more sustainable and a lot easier.
All right. That covers all of the questions that came in through the chat that I found. Just as a side note to people who had submitted questions regarding the polling questions, I tried to get to each of you individually to address your concerns or issues you may have had. If I didn't get to you individually, I apologize. But please know that I will go through the chat log and I will make notes if you had any technical issues regarding the polling questions.
I will also go through the chat log because I'm interested in these restaurants you guys send over. So.
That's right. Yes. Well, I also put in the chat box the links to the evaluations. There is one link for the evaluation for this session specifically, but then there is also a general conference evaluation link. And so your feedback for the general conference as well as this session would be greatly appreciated. Lisa and Jake, do you have closing comments?
No, and Carolyn, do you share our contact information? So if anybody has further questions, feel free to reach out. I mean, that's Jake and I's passion is thought leadership and making sure that if anybody wants to go deeper on any of their questions, we're happy to set that up.
Sounds great. And I believe if the contact information wasn't included in the materials, we can make sure that attendees receive your contact info, or perhaps maybe they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yep. Yep. Of course you can.
Fabulous. All right. And yes, there were only 3 polling questions. We're also using Zoom data to see when you were logged on. That just came through. And I think we are at our closing time here. So thank you, Jake and Lisa. This was a great session. And based on the feedback I'm seeing now coming through, many people enjoyed it.
Awesome. Great to hear. We love having these. So hopefully we can talk to some of you guys soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending our virtual MBAC. We really appreciate your being so flexible and working with us on the technology. Love to see the little applause reactions coming through.
Get some waves.
So, good to see you all. And I hope everyone in attendance, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and have a great weekend. Take care.
Bye, everyone.